All right, so get ready because today we're going deep into the making of Star Wars.
The original trilogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
using the Empire of Dreams documentary from Cinerama on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
It's fantastic.
It's so good.
It's really good. So we're going to kind of set the stage here.
Okay.
It's 1973. Hollywood's kind of in this weird creative rut, and there's this young filmmaker named George Lucas. And he has this, like, out there idea for a space opera.
It's interesting how the timing kind of aligns there, right? Like the old studio system's kind of crumbling.
Yeah.
You've got this new generation of filmmakers
Yeah.
who are like pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Right.
And they're really bringing their own vision to their work.
Yeah.
So that kind of creates the space for someone like Lucas, I think.
Totally. And he was already kind of turning heads with American Graffiti, right?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah. But a space opera.
I mean, that's a big gamble.
Huge gamble.
Especially back then.
Especially back then.
Science fiction wasn't exactly like a box office darling.
No, not at all.
Like, to give you some context,
Okay.
the biggest sci-fi hit before Star Wars had only made like $24 million.
Wow.
Which isn't a ton.
No.
It's like, that's not blockbuster numbers.
Not at all.
Especially for now.
And so studios like Universal and United Artists passed?
It did.
I mean, it's kind of like a bullet dodged almost.
Right. It's like, wow, what if?
Yeah.
It's really interesting because Lucas was actually kind of relieved when those studios passed.
Really?
He was so protective of his vision.
I can imagine.
He knew that the wrong studio could really mess things up.
Oh, for sure.
Like they could have totally
Taken it in a totally different...
taken it in a different direction.
So that's where Alan Ladd Jr. comes in.
Head of 20th Century Fox.
Yeah. And I think he had seen American Graffiti and just kind of saw something in Lucas.
Yeah, Ladd was a bit of a visionary himself, too.
Yeah.
Like he sensed that shift that was happening in Hollywood. And he was willing to gamble on fresh talent. Yeah. So it's like a great example of how sometimes taking a chance on someone
Totally.
can lead to something extraordinary.
Absolutely.
Oh.
So Lucas has this deal.
He's got a studio.
A studio that believes in him.
Or at least believes in him enough to back him.
Financially.
But where did the idea for Star Wars even come from?
I know, right?
Like, how did he come up with this?
It's not like he pulled it out of thin air.
No, he drew inspiration from a bunch of different sources.
Yeah.
He was a huge fan of those like old Flash Gordon serials.
Right.
Like pulpy sci-fi adventures,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But he also like delved into the world of mythology.
Really?
Especially the work of Joseph Campbell.
Wait, so he consulted a mythology expert?
He did.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, Lucas was really fascinated by Campbell's idea
Okay.
that myths from different cultures share these common archetypes.
Right.
Hero, the mentor, the quest.
Yeah.
And he saw the potential to like weave those timeless elements into Star Wars and actually like sought Campbell's advice during the writing process.
That's so cool. I never knew that.
Yeah, it's a really cool connection.
That's really cool. And that kind of explains why I think the story feels so universal.
Totally.
You know, like
Yeah.
even though it takes place in a galaxy far, far away, it still feels
Relatable.
very relatable.
Yeah.
So the documentary talks about how the first cut of the film
Oh, yeah.
was a complete disaster.
It was a mess.
What exactly went wrong?
The initial edit was just really choppy.
Okay.
It lacked pacing. It felt disjointed. The story just didn't flow
Right.
the way that Lucas had envisioned it.
So what did he do? Like start from scratch?
Pretty much, yeah. He brought in a whole new editing team,
Wow.
and they restructured the entire film.
Really?
Yeah, they tightened the rhythm with faster cuts,
Wow.
rearranged scenes
Hmm.
to improve the flow, and they really worked to emphasize like the emotional beats of the story.
So even a visionary like Lucas
Yeah.
needs a good editor.
Oh, absolutely. Editing can make or break a film.
Absolutely. It's amazing how just a few cuts
Yeah.
can completely transform a film.
Totally. And of course, we can't forget about John Williams' score.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine Star Wars
Yeah.
without that like grand sweeping orchestral music.
It's iconic.
Right.
So iconic.
And it's funny to think back then, like orchestral scores weren't really trendy.
Right.
Disco was all the rage.
Yeah.
But Lucas knew that a traditional symphonic sound was like essential
Yeah.
to creating that epic scope and emotional depth he wanted.
Right.
And he was right. I mean,
Yeah.
the music is so integral to the Star Wars experience.
It really is.
Yeah.
The documentary also dives into the casting process.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fascinating. Apparently, Lucas held joint auditions with Brian De Palma
at the same time.
who was casting Carrie at the time.
It's a great example of how these young filmmakers were all supporting each other.
Yeah.
Kind of shaking things up in Hollywood.
And Lucas went against the grain by choosing mostly unknowns for the main roles.
He did.
And he faced pushback from the studio.
Yeah.
And even from Francis Ford Coppola, who was all about casting big names.
Right.
Why do you think he took that risk?
Well, I think he was looking for actors who embodied the spirit of the characters.
Yeah.
Not just famous faces.
Right.
He wanted that raw energy and authenticity
Yeah.
that would make them feel real, even in this fantastical world.
Right, and that brings us to Harrison Ford,
Oh, yeah.
who wasn't even supposed to audition for Han Solo.
Right.
He was there to feed lines to the other actors.
It's a classic Hollywood story.
It is.
Lucas had worked with Ford on American Graffiti,
Right.
but initially wasn't keen on casting him again.
Interesting.
But Ford's charisma and that kind of world-weary swagger just won him over.
I mean, it's hard to imagine anyone else as Han Solo now.
Right.
But you mentioned casting unknowns,
Yeah.
and Carrie Fisher was far from unknown,
Sure.
coming from Hollywood royalty.
Yeah.
So what was Lucas's thought on that?
Well, I think he recognized that Fisher brought a certain presence and strength to the role of Princess Leia.
For sure.
She was someone who could hold her own against these more established actors.
Yeah.
And bring a sense of authority to the character.
Right.
Of course, even she had to deal with the pressures of Hollywood back then.
Right.
The documentary mentions that she had to negotiate losing 10 pounds for the role.
It's a reminder of the realities that actresses faced.
Yeah.
And unfortunately still face today.
Totally.
But Fisher's talent and that rebellious spirit she brought to Leia,
Oh, yeah.
I think transcended those superficial expectations.
Absolutely. And then there's Chewbacca.
Yeah, to find Chewbacca, they had to think outside the box.
They did.
And they found Peter Mayhew working as a hospital orderly.
Talk about an unconventional casting call.
I know, right?
It just goes to show you that sometimes the most perfect casting choices
Yeah.
come from the most unexpected places.
It really does. And so with this incredible cast assembled, it was time to start filming. And where does Lucas decide to shoot these epic space battles?
The Tunisian desert.
I mean, shooting in a real-world location like that must have been so challenging.
It was incredibly challenging.
The logistics alone.
Intense heat malfunctioning props. They even had a torrential downpour on the first day of filming in the Sahara.
No way!
Yeah.
Wow.
The first major rainfall they'd had there in 50 years.
Oh my gosh, the documentary is full of stories about those early days of filming.
It is.
Like the stunt coordinator, Peter Diamond, who played a Tuscan raider,
I know.
complaining about the sun.
It's fun.
I can't even imagine being in that heavy costume under that sun.
And you can't forget Anthony Daniels
Oh, yeah.
in that C-3PO costume.
Oh my God.
He describes it literally falling apart on the first day of shooting.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, it was a tough shoot for sure.
But amidst all the chaos and setbacks, Sir Alec Guinness,
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Obi-Wan Kenobi brought a sense of professionalism and gravitas to the set. It seems like Lucas felt that having an established star like Guinness added some weight to the production.
For sure.
Especially in those early uncertain days.
Absolutely. I mean, Guinness's presence not only brought authority to the role, but also reassured the studio and the crew that this, kids movie might actually have some depth.
Totally.
Yeah.
So while filming in Tunisia was certainly an adventure,
It was.
the real magic happened back in California.
At ILM.
At Industrial Light and Magic, or ILM as most people know it.
Right. And this is where things get really revolutionary.
Okay.
Because Lucas realized that there were no dedicated visual effects companies at the time.
At the time.
So he decided to create his own.
Wow.
ILM was built from scratch in an empty warehouse.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. So they were basically inventing techniques as they went along.
They were writing the playbook for modern visual effects.
Wow.
This team of model makers, artists, and tech wizards.
Yeah.
They developed motion control cameras,
Right.
which allowed them to precisely repeat camera movements.
Right.
Which is crucial for creating those seamless special effects shots.
Yeah.
They built incredibly detailed model spaceships and even pioneered the use of computers in filmmaking.
And that was all happening back in the 70s?
In the 70s.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's a true testament to Lucas's vision and the ingenuity of that ILM team.
Totally.
They were pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
Yeah.
And in the process, they changed filmmaking forever.
But even with all the groundbreaking work at ILM, the first cut of the film still wasn't working?
Nope. Even with all those special effects.
Wow.
The story itself needed work.
Okay.
It was just too slow. It lacked the energy that Lucas wanted.
So he brought in a new editing team?
Another one.
Right.
Yeah, he brought in Paul Hirsch and Richard Chew,
Okay.
who had a very different approach to editing.
Okay.
They focused on creating a faster, more dynamic rhythm.
Okay.
Using techniques like jump cuts,
Yeah.
where you abruptly cut between shots.
That's right.
And quick transitions to like propel the story forward.
And that's what we see in the final film.
Yeah.
It's amazing how a few well-placed cuts
Totally.
can completely transform a film.
And then there's the sound design.
Oh, yeah.
Crafted by the legendary Ben Burt.
A legend.
He created iconic sounds for things that didn't even exist.
Right.
Like lightsabers and blasters.
Didn't he also do Chewbacca's voice?
He did.
Wow.
Burt was a master at using everyday sounds to create these otherworldly effects.
Right.
For example, the lightsaber sound
Yeah.
is actually a combination of the hum of an old film projector
Really?
and feedback from a television set.
Wow. So those iconic sounds came from pretty mundane sources.
Pretty much, yeah.
And of course, there's the voice of Darth Vader.
Oh, yeah.
David Prowse, the actor who played Vader on set, had a very strong British accent.
He did.
And Lucas felt it didn't quite fit the character.
No, it wasn't menacing enough.
Right. They needed a voice that was deeper, more menacing. One that truly embodied the dark side.
Right.
So they brought in James Earl Jones.
Of course.
Who has this like incredible booming voice.
Yeah, and just like that, one of the most iconic villain voices in cinema history was born.
It's hard to imagine Darth Vader sounding any other way.
Apparently is.
It's incredible how something as simple as a voice change can completely transform a character.
Oh, for sure. It shows that every detail matters.
Right.
Especially when you're creating something as iconic as Star Wars.
So by this point, the film was really starting to come together.
It was.
The editing was tighter, the special effects were amazing, the sound design was revolutionary, and they had a fantastic cast.
Amazing cast.
But there was still a lot of skepticism surrounding the film.
There was.
Even from Lucas's own friends.
It makes sense, though. You can kind of understand why Star Wars was unlike anything anyone had ever seen.
Right.
It was this crazy blend of sci-fi fantasy and classic adventure all tied together with those mythic archetypes that Lucas was so fascinated by.
Right. It was a bold experiment, and not everyone was convinced it would work.
Yeah, they were like, what is this?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
But despite the doubts, Lucas and his team pressed on.
They did. They had this unwavering belief in their vision.
And then finally, the moment of truth arrived.
The premiere.
The documentary really captures that nervous anticipation of everyone involved.
Oh, yeah?
You know, they'd poured their hearts and souls into this film.
Years of work.
Years of work. But would audiences embrace it?
Yeah. Would they get it?
It was a huge gamble.
It was.
But Lucas believed that if he could just get people into the theaters, they'd be transported by this story that he was trying to tell.
Yeah.
And, well,
the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a remarkable story. Star Wars became this cultural phenomenon.
Right.
Exceeding, like, all expectations.
Totally.
And as we kind of move into the making of Empire, it's interesting to see how Lucas's approach to filmmaking kind of evolves.
Well, he certainly wasn't afraid to take risks.
No.
The documentary highlights how he decided to self-finance the sequel.
He did.
Turning down studio money to maintain that complete creative control.
Which was a huge gamble.
Huge.
Especially considering the film ended up going significantly over budget.
Oh, wow.
Lucas had to, like, scramble for funds to avoid losing his independence.
So he was all in.
Oh, yeah. He was committed.
Wow. Putting his own fortune on the line for the sake of creative freedom.
Yeah, I mean, it really shows his dedication to protecting his vision.
Totally. But who did he bring in to direct Empire?
Yeah.
Surely not another big-budget action director.
Surprisingly, no.
Okay.
He chose Irvin Kershner.
Okay.
A director known more for, like, character-driven films.
Interesting.
Like Up the Sandbox and Eyes of Laura Mars.
That seems like an unusual choice for a Star Wars film.
It does on the surface.
Yeah.
But Lucas recognized that the heart of Star Wars lay in its characters.
Okay.
He wanted Empire to delve deeper into, like, their emotions, their relationships, their struggles.
Yeah.
And Kershner, with his sensitivity to character development, was like the perfect choice to bring that vision to life.
It's interesting because Empire is often considered the darkest.
Totally.
And most emotionally complex film in the trilogy.
Yeah, and Kershner wasn't afraid to push the actors.
Yeah.
To deliver those more nuanced performances.
Right.
He wasn't shy about exploring those darker themes.
Yeah.
Which added a whole new layer of depth to the Star Wars universe.
Totally. It would have been so easy to just rehash the formula of the first film.
Right.
But Lucas and Kirshner wanted to do something more challenging.
Yeah, they wanted to push the boundary.
More ambitious.
And speaking of ambition,
Yes.
the visual effects in Empire.
Oh, yeah.
Groundbreaking.
They were amazing. I'm especially curious about the Battle of Hoth.
Oh, yeah.
With those imposing AT walkers.
Those things are so cool.
How did they pull that off back then?
It was a really complex sequence.
Yeah.
That combined like meticulously crafted models
Right.
with intricate motion control photography.
Wow.
They even used matte paintings
Okay.
where they'd paint backgrounds on glass
Wow.
and combine them with live action footage.
I mean, they still look so real.
They do.
It's hard to believe that they were basically just oversized models.
I know, and the filmmakers were obsessed with detail.
Oh, I'm sure.
They even built a full-size foot for one of the walkers.
What?
Just for close-up shots.
Wow. Talk about commitment to realism.
Yeah, and of course we can't talk about Empire without mentioning Yoda.
Oh, Yoda.
That little green Jedi master.
Oh, he's a fan favorite.
He is.
But I can imagine bringing him to life was no easy feat.
Oh, it was a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
It required the combined talents of puppet designer Stuart Freeborn
Right.
and puppeteer Frank Oz.
Right.
I mean, Yoda was a landmark achievement in puppetry.
He really
A
was.
character with such expressiveness and depth of emotion.
And the documentary goes into detail about the challenges of working with the puppet.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It kind of was.
Yeah.
The set had to be elevated to accommodate the puppeteers working below.
Right.
And Mark Hamill, who played Luke,
Yeah.
couldn't even hear Frank Oz's performance during their scenes together.
So he was essentially acting opposite a puppet that he could barely see,
Pretty much.
let alone hear.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's a testament to both Hamill's talent and Oz's skill
Yeah.
that their interactions feel so natural.
They really brought that relationship to life.
They did, and I love that story about Yoda's head cracking during rehearsal.
Oh my gosh, I know.
It just reminds us that even with all the meticulous planning,
Yeah.
things can go wrong.
Yeah.
And those unplanned moments often lead to some of the best stories.
They do. Speaking of memorable moments, we have to talk about that line.
Okay.
The one that sent shockwaves through the Star Wars fandom.
You know the one?
No, I am your father.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
That was a closely guarded secret, known only to a select few during production.
Wow.
Even Mark Hamill didn't know the truth until right before they filmed the scene.
Imagine the shock
I know.
to find out that Darth Vader, this symbol of evil, was actually your father.
Right.
What a mind-blowing twist.
It was a masterstroke of storytelling.
Yep.
It deepened the emotional complexity of the narrative
For sure.
and raised the stakes for the final film.
Totally.
Suddenly, the conflict wasn't just about good versus evil.
Right.
It was about family,
Wow.
about redemption.
It created this whole new dynamic
It did.
between Luke and Vader.
Absolutely.
That would play out in the final chapter of the trilogy.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
But before we get there, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
You said that Empire went over budget,
It did.
even though Lucas self-financed it.
Yeah.
What happened there?
Well, the production faced numerous challenges,
Okay.
including that infamous blizzard that hit Norway
Oh, yeah.
while they were filming the Hoth scenes.
Wait, the snow on Hoth was real?
It was real. They actually filmed on location in Norway.
Wow.
And the blizzard was so severe, it shut down production for days.
Wow.
And then there were the technical complexities of filming creatures,
Right.
like the tauntauns
Right.
and the wampa ice creature.
Those were so innovative for their time.
Oh, they were groundbreaking.
Yeah.
But they required a lot of experimentation and problem solving.
It sounds like those real-world conditions really added to the gritty, realistic feel of the film.
Absolutely.
But those challenges also contributed to the budget overruns.
They did.
Lucas was so committed to his vision
It was.
that he was willing to pour more of his own money into the project
Yeah.
to ensure that it was done right.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. Most filmmakers would probably cave to studio pressure at that point.
Probably.
So with all those challenges, both creative and financial,
Yeah.
how was Empire received when it finally premiered?
Well, The Empire Strikes Back premiered in May of 1980,
Okay.
and it was another massive hit.
As expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just a commercial success.
Okay.
It was critically acclaimed as well.
Wow.
Many critics consider it the best film in the entire Star Wars saga.
It's interesting that a film that was so dark and challenging, so different from that lighthearted adventure of the first film,
Yeah.
resonated so strongly with audiences.
It's true. I think it speaks to the power of complex storytelling.
Yeah.
Empire didn't shy away from those difficult themes or
Mm.
emotional depth.
Yeah.
It showed that even in a galaxy far, far away,
Yeah.
characters could struggle with doubt, fear, and loss.
And it left audiences with a cliffhanger ending,
Oh, yeah.
desperate to know what would happen next.
Lucas had set the stage for an epic conclusion,
He did.
and the anticipation for Return of the Jedi was huge.
With that cliffhanger ending from Empire, I mean, I can only imagine the pressure Lucas felt going into Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
This is the grand finale.
Yeah, the culmination
of everything.
of those years.
All those years he'd been building towards.
Right.
And from what I've heard, the production of Jedi was just as ambitious,
Oh, yeah, if not more so.
if not more so than the previous films.
I mean, they were shooting on location in the redwood forests of California.
Endor.
For Endor. They were building elaborate sets at L3 Studios in London.
Wow.
And, of course, pushing those limits of visual effects at ILM.
And Lucas, being Lucas, decided to self-finance the film again,
Once again.
turning down studio money to maintain that creative control.
It's amazing he was completely committed to his vision,
Wow.
even if it meant taking on this huge financial risk.
That's incredible.
It shows how much this project meant to him.
Totally, but this time he couldn't direct it himself.
Right.
He was too busy overseeing the entire production.
Exactly. He brought in Richard Marquand,
Okay.
a British director
Okay.
known for Eye of the Needle,
Okay.
which is a World War II thriller.
Okay.
Marquand was a really talented director.
Yeah.
But the documentary kind of suggests that Lucas was much more hands-on with Jedi than he had been with Empire.
I guess he wanted to make sure this final chapter was exactly how he envisioned it.
Yeah, he had a very specific vision.
And speaking of visions, there was one big question on everyone's mind.
Oh, yeah.
Would Harrison Ford return as Han Solo?
There was a lot of speculation.
I bet.
Ford was a little hesitant at first.
Really?
He even suggested that Han Solo be killed off early in the film.
Can you imagine the uproar?
I know fans would have been devastated.
Han Solo dying.
But Lucas knew Han was integral to the story,
Yeah.
and he's determined to give the character a fitting send-off.
And he did.
Yeah, from that daring rescue from Jabba the Hutt to his
Right.
heroic role in the final battle against the Empire.
Yeah.
Han Solo went out on a high note.
He did. And let's not forget about the new characters introduced in Jedi,
Yeah.
like Jabba the Hutt.
Oh, Jabba.
That grotesque, slug-like crime lord.
I mean, Jabba was a marvel of special effects.
Oh, yeah.
This combination of puppetry animatronics and stop-motion animation.
It took a team of incredibly talented artists to bring him to life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then there are the Ewoks.
the Ewok.
Those adorable, furry creatures.
I know they get some mixed reaction
Yeah.
from fans, but I've always loved them.
Me too. I think they add a certain charm and whimsy to Jedi,
Yeah.
and their role in the final battle was actually quite significant.
It was.
The documentary mentions that Warwick Davis,
Oh, yeah.
the actor who played Wicket,
Wicket.
was only 11 years old when he landed the role.
So cute.
He was a huge Star Wars fan
Yeah.
who ended up living out his dream on the big screen.
It's a great story.
It is, and it's a reminder that even in a galaxy far, far away, dreams can come true.
Ah.
So with all these elements in place, the epic conclusion to the Star Wars saga was finally ready.
Yeah,
Return of the Jedi premiered in May of 1983,
it did.
and as expected, it was another box office smash.
Of course.
I mean, it was a fitting end to the trilogy.
It was.
Thrilling action, heartfelt moments,
Yeah,
and a satisfying resolution to the conflict between the rebels and the Empire.
totally. We saw the redemption of Darth Vader,
Right.
the triumph of good over evil,
Yeah.
and the restoration of hope to the galaxy.
But for Lucas, it was a bittersweet victory.
It was.
He was going through a divorce at the time.
Yeah.
And felt this sense of both accomplishment and exhaustion.
I can imagine.
You know, he'd poured so much of himself into these films.
Years of his life.
Years of his life.
Yeah, he had created something truly groundbreaking,
He did.
something that would change the landscape of cinema forever.
Absolutely. But he also knew he needed a break.
Yeah.
A chance to step back
Right?
and recharge those creative batteries.
Yeah.
And even as he was stepping away from Star Wars,
Yeah.
he continued to push the boundaries of filmmaking.
He did.
He developed those groundbreaking editing and sound technologies we talked about earlier.
Right. Editroid Soundroid.
And of course, there's Pixar,
Of course.
which revolutionized animation.
Completely changed the game.
Lucas was always looking ahead, always searching for new ways to tell stories
Yeah.
and transport audiences.
And he did it all with that same innovative spirit
Totally.
that brought Star Wars to life.
So our deep dive into the making of the original Star Wars trilogy has really only scratched the surface.
It really has.
It's a story filled with creativity, passion,
Yeah.
and a bit of that movie magic we all love.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of imagination
Right.
and the enduring legacy
Yeah.
of one of the most beloved film franchises of all time.
And for those who want to explore further, I highly recommend checking out the full Empire of Dreams documentary.
Definitely do that.
It's a treasure trove of behind-the-scenes stories and insights that will deepen your appreciation for these classic films.
For sure. And as you watch it and think about how the Star Wars phenomenon has shaped your own view of storytelling,
Right.
film, or even the world around you.
Yeah.
I mean, these films have had such a profound impact on our culture,
Right.
and their influence continues to be felt today.
It's been a fantastic journey revisiting the making of Star Wars.
It has been.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
May the Force be with you.